What is up, guys? Welcome back to DevPulse. We are doing these podcasts so regularly now. I'm very grateful, but we figured we would give it a name instead of just ambiguously saying, hey, I have somebody to talk to. So we're going with DevPulse. Let me know what you think. Today, we're talking to Eric Crawford. Eric is a senior product manager. He has over 25 years of experience in the product management space within tech. He knows a ton about delivering front-to-end service products for tech companies. He's been doing it a lot, so there's a lot of good info in here. We talk a lot in this podcast about getting into tech, how to strategize your job search, why having a polished resume is BS and something that most people completely overthink, and how to strategically apply to jobs that have even thousands of applicants and stand out as a solid prospect, even if you're a junior. So you're not going to want to miss this one. Make sure to tune in. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you very much for being on, Eric. Now to the show. I present to you Eric Crawford. All right, Eric, thanks for coming on today. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Colby. Nice to chat with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few reasons why, I wanted to have you on today. First off, we have a relationship going back the better part of a year now, where I initially hired you on Mentor Cruise for some advice when I was kind of making my foray into becoming a software developer. I've since landed my first position. So that's been going quite well, and I have you to thank for quite a bit in that. I have to give a plug early on for your services on Mentor Cruise, by the way. So if anybody is looking for career advice in general, job hunting strategies and stuff like that, we're going to cover that a lot more today. So I think people will get a taste for kind of what you have to offer, but I would highly recommend that people go check you out on Mentor Cruise. The value is definitely there. So how long have you been doing the mentorship on Mentor Cruise, and what led you to do that in the first place?
Yeah, I've been doing it for about 3 years. I would say the origin story is that just before the pandemic, I lost my job, and so I joined a mentor program, and I went through it and I found that it was helpful, but I also found, just based on my amount of experience in tech, that I could do just as good as they, could. And I could probably do a better job just by being more, making it more personalized, more creative, and a little more practical. So I researched and just found Mentor Cruise as a network for mentors, posted my profile, and then pretty soon I had my first client, and we had a great experience, and I received a 5-star review from that person, and then the next person signed up, and then the next person, and it was just very organic, and it really, validated my hypothesis, which was that, I can leverage my, product experience and long tenure in tech to really share a lot of my experiences and share best practices and empower them to put those into play.
Very nice. Yeah. So I came to you specifically as somebody who, I wasn't interested from our relationship in gaining technical experience. More so, I've been self-employed for the better part of a decade now, and I was looking to get back into the job market. So my interview skills, I must say, were lacking. I kind of perceived a job hunt as clicking apply on LinkedIn, or at best a company's private website, and perhaps sending a cover letter. So a lot of those misperceptions were kind of cleared away for me. We've recently, I guess it depends on who you ask, but it sounds like we may be nearing an exit of a small recession that we've been through over the past, but just over a year now. But there is this common sentiment that the tech market is still quite tight, especially for people who are newer to their careers, juniors, Um, you've been in product management, if I'm not mistaken, for over 20 years now. Um, so, I mean, as somebody who's been through multiple ups and downs in the market in that time, what would you tell job hunters today, people looking to get into tech today, um, about the market in general?
Yeah, that's a huge question, and things are always evolving. So I recently heard on a sports betting podcast the phrase adapt or die.
Hmm.
And I thought that was very poignant. So we've, experienced the pandemic 2020 and then the fallout from that. So it's now been almost 4 years ish, right? And things have changed so drastically with respect to work, where you work, how you work, how you get hired, what the recruiting process is like. Everything has changed. And then of late, there's been a huge tech correction basically with major companies, FANG companies, whatever, laying off thousands of people. So all of those people are now back in the job market. And based on the fat that has been trimmed by all of these companies, you can't really expect that to come back because every company is leaner, smarter, more efficient, using AI, whatever it is. So it's increasingly more important to really prove your value, much more beyond words on a one-page resume. So I would say that's huge. The other thing is that I'd say the mindset of the average tech employee now should be more as an eternal freelancer. And if you are able to secure full-time work, that's great. And you should, invest all you can in making that a positive and successful endeavor. But you should never just rest upon or rely upon one company paying you income. You should if you're working full time, you should always be looking for side projects or just ways to help people. And if you're not working, you should still be doing that and looking for full-time work. So project-based work, full-time work, contract work, volunteering work, all of that adds momentum to your pursuit and your identity as a tech professional. And all of those activities generally lead to potential opportunities for either new projects, new full-time jobs, new connections. So that's the current mindset that I think more people should really adopt right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the mindset of being an eternal freelancer, I think it probably came up first in tech especially, but would you say that's a relatively new mindset that's been adopted over the last few years? Because I don't know, I at least, I'm 29. When my parents were raising me, it was much more so, about being a company man, so to speak, getting a job with, great benefits. My mom works for the county, so she's a fantastic example of that. She's been in the same job for the better part of 20 years now. And she's retiring in 6 months, so congratulations, Mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I've been, around the, new tech market for just, about 2 years now. And that's always been the mindset, just based on my very short tenure. Is that change, like, is that sentiment a pretty recent shift? What's up, guys? This video is not sponsored, but I did want to tell you real quick about Zero to Mastery. Zero to Mastery has over 60 different courses you can choose from, so there's truly a course for everybody in this. You get access to their Discord community, which has over 400,000 members, so tons of opportunity to troubleshoot, network, meet people from all around the world that are also learning the same thing as you. One thing that I'm really excited for is the 3JS bootcamp that they just came out with. 3JS is a JavaScript framework that you can do 3D rendering through, which is sick, dude. If you haven't seen them already, look up some 3JS portfolio reviews. We're going to be doing one of those pretty soon, but there's a lot of cool examples of people that have made amazing websites using 3JS. So I'm excited to dive into that, and I'm excited for any of you that choose to as well. So check out Zero to Mastery. I would just go with the monthly subscription at first, and then like hop up to the yearly subscription if you think it's a good fit for you. You'll save a little bit of money there, but you also mitigate the downside risk. It's like $40 if you spend a month and you hate all the courses, but you're not going to. You're going to like them. So click the affiliate link in the description below. That'll help me out a little bit, help the channel out, and we'll be able to keep bringing you awesome content like this. So cheers.
I just think that's the way you need to adapt right now.
Yeah.
I think, people have been freelancers for decades, right? Going back to pre-digital, whether it be print design, writing, whatever, right? Sure. And people have built their, lives and income streams solely on freelancers, and I always respected them. And now, corporations are, they don't have much loyalty or really any loyalty, right? I'm seeing stories on LinkedIn of women being laid off by Google on maternity leave. Yeah. I saw another one from somebody at Airtable after they did a large cut last week, where that person had worked there for 5 years, and the company had raised a total of 1.4 billion, and they couldn't find a way to keep somebody who worked there for 5 years, which is like 20 years in regular terms. So if you're not working, there's definitely a bias against that, with whether it's fair or unfair. But if you can say that you're actively working on, passion projects, or you're helping people like I am through mentoring, right? At least you can show that, you're going after it. Right. And you're not just sitting around waiting for some company to tap you on the head with their wand saying, okay, you're the person we want. Right. You really, you need to be, there are all these sites now, like Polywork or Y Combinator's co-founder matching site, where people are looking for collaborators. And if you don't have a profile on all these sites showcasing your skills and your willingness to help, then I feel like you're missing out on a lot of work opportunities, potential income opportunities, and for sure network opportunities. Right. So yeah, I'd say it's all about being active, being curious, being accessible, and offering value. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's kind of like being productive at all costs, so to speak. So I initially reached out to you based off of this specific Reddit post. I just saw this and you kind of immediately came to mind, because I thought you may have some insight as to what one might do. So the title of the post here is that it's nearly impossible to get a job right now, which I mean is maybe a bit dramatic in my estimation, but I guess we'll see what you say. So for those who are just listening, this is a junior front-end developer position that was posted on, I think this is LinkedIn's interface. And
At the time of this post, it had been made less than a day ago, and there were almost 2,300 applicants for that specific post. At which, curiously enough, at a or interestingly enough, at a company with 1 to 10 employees. So that's quite the pool of applicants to choose from. I do wonder how their workforce was distributed through sorting through all these applications. But obviously, this is a huge amount of applicants, and just statistically speaking, somebody who applies for this job has a very small likelihood of even being noticed during the hiring process. But I mean, you and I both know that this isn't the whole story. You know, not everybody that applied for this job is one of 2,300 because of their approach to applying to this job specifically. So, as somebody who has landed many contracts and mentored others to do the same, you know, ink deals, get job offers, what would you say someone is overlooking if they see this and like fully agree with the sentiment of the post that, you know, because this job has this many applicants, it's impossible to get a job right now, or the likelihood is extremely low? What would you say to somebody who feels highly discouraged by seeing this?
Yeah, I think that that number is definitely intimidating. I usually see roles with applicants mostly in the hundreds, the
Right.
low hundreds, which is still, if you just take that number for what it is, it's, you know, 1% or less if you just take that number. But
Right.
then when you think about, you know, how many people applied with relevant backgrounds or skills, or how many, you know, added a cover letter showing some intention of, you know, why they're the right person, you know, that number gets lower and lower, right? So I think I was listening to a podcast called Hiring Behind the Scenes, which I highly recommend. And they have a lot of interviews with recruiters about, you know, what actually happens behind the scenes. So that's really valuable. I think generally, you know, I think one of the guests said that if they get it down to 15 people, they generally expect to be able to make an offer based on that pool. Um, so the point, though, is that intentionality really matters. And I'm working on a concept right now that's kind of like a scale of intentionality with respect to applying for jobs. And at the lowest end is something like LinkedIn Easy Apply, right? You click a button, you send the resume that you sent to every other company that you easy apply to, and then you walk away and hope for the best, right?
Right.
And then the next level would be, okay, you actually go to the company site and you apply and you write a cover letter that's targeted to that company. And then you can keep going higher. There are many levels that are higher where you're showing more intention by, you know, doing a project or redesigning a landing page or doing a quick SWOT analysis on the company's competitors and opportunities. And, or like you did, you created videos of yourself after each stage of the interview process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said what an impact that had on everyone you spoke to. So, and then you got the job. And that showed a huge amount of intentionality. And so I think people need to recognize that intentionality is the key. And if you really want to go after something, then, you know, the sky's the limit.
Right.
And the only real limit is your curiosity, your creativity, your work ethic, and your efficiency in generating, you know, these types of pitches. So, you know, I say that's the way to go. It takes more work, But once you do a few, it gets faster. And it also benefits you because even if you get rejected or they don't answer you, you still basically did a case study that you can then put into your portfolio or on LinkedIn and say, hey, I analyzed Nike's homepage yesterday. Here are 3 observations I made about areas of improvement. And then that could start a dialogue on LinkedIn and people can see it and they can say, hey, yeah, we want somebody who's always questioning the status quo or looking for ways to iterate on products. Let's talk. So it's all about a, a lot of people have trouble creating, and that's a big barrier. And people, really need to get past that. And even though their creations might not be very good, it's just the practice that really counts, and you'll get better.
Yeah, navigating how to actually put forward that extra effort and intentionality that you talk about, I think is relatively individualized. I mean, there's probably, off the top of my head, a half dozen things that I would recommend most people do in terms of trying to stand out and display that intentionality. But you're also going to find that different things match you a lot better. So, like typically, at least with the job that I ended up getting, I wrote a cover letter and I made the videos, and you know, like just to be more clear, what I did essentially was anytime I interviewed or interacted with somebody relating to that specific job, I sent sort of just like a thank you letter in the form of a video via Loom. And it's so funny because nobody mentioned maybe because it wasn't good, nobody mentioned my cover letter through the interview process, but everybody brought up the videos that I made. And it's still kind of, I mean, somebody made a joke today about people being YouTubers and developers and brought me up in a company meeting. So it's kind of, at least in the small company that I'm with, it's at least partially what I'm known for. And it's so funny because videos are so, like, at least for me, my personality, I'm relatively verbose. I'm not terrible at communicating in person or verbally. And so it is so much easier for me to just make a video than it is to write down an email or a cover letter. Although I've found that, fortunately the part that's easy for me actually has the highest impact. So that's been good. I think I would generally say that to people as well. Like if you're not great on camera or don't like talking very more than you have to, then try to exercise, your skills in writing to get that extra mile, and vice versa. So
Yeah, sort of. I mean, video is the best because we're all humans and people want to relate to each other as humans, and video is human,
right,
and it shows who you are, and you can gesticulate, and it shows your tone of voice, it shows what you look like.
right,
And then even with Loom, you can just put yourself in a small bubble in the left-hand corner where your video presence is somewhat de-emphasized, but you can showcase on the screen what you want to communicate to them.
yeah,
And that could be a mock-up, it could be a GitHub code sample, it could be information architecture for a certain project or website, or it could be a process flow that you implemented at a previous company for a program management role. So everyone needs to find their own format, but some mix of some digital document plus some voice or visual representation of yourself really goes a long way. And I have countless examples of that, at least one of which I can go through. But you have to find your own format and you have to do experiments. And that's the beauty of today's society and digital, right? Is like there are people, or there's one person who's making, over $100,000 a day doing TikToks about Excel.
Right.
So she found her model or her format. She found her messaging, points of emphasis, and she created a huge, income stream just from that, and
Right.
keywords and whatever else. But so, yeah, I think, you have to be kind of like a triple threat. Not
Right.
everybody,
Right.
most people are not very good writers, especially in this global marketplace when it comes to, the amount of non-native English speakers and things like that. So that's why the resume is so terrible for looking for work, because 99% of people who have resumes are terrible writers,
Right.
and they're sweating over whether it should be one page or two pages. But does it even matter when it's just like filled with word salad and
Right.
jargon that everybody else is using? So if you're not looking for other ways to communicate your value, and you're stressing over, you know, the length of your resume, or whether it's whatever else, you're sort of barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, it's just literally that was my next question, is how important is crafting a great resume to getting a job? And I think that was one of the bigger things that you taught me, because I mean, one of my one of my primary concerns going into the job market when I was like I haven't updated my resume in a decade. I hardly even have one. And yes, every time I would bring that up, you would say something very very kind, but also brutally honest about the unimportance of the resume being of thinking of the resume as the spearhead of the job hunt. So that was quite helpful.
I think, yeah, I mean, we definitely had some conflict, like positive or constructive
Sure.
conflict, I would say, where, and I've heard that from people. But what I loved about you was that you accepted it, and then you kind of looked within, and and you responded to it. Because I honestly, just from where I was sitting on a Zoom call with you, I thought it was going to be really, really hard for you to break into a developer role. And I think it really challenged you to develop, some real confidence and some real persistence that got you over, any mental humps or whatever they were, to really go after it. And when you sent me that message through LinkedIn that you got this role, I was blown away, because one, you surprised me. Two, you mentioned some of the tactics that I recommended, and that was gorgeous. I mean, I loved it. Like, anytime you can exceed somebody's expectations based on just, taking advice but making it your own,
Right.
I think that's the ultimate. And I've had a couple people lately who have said, um, they one person ended the mentorship because I, said some things. They asked me to do a mock interview, and so we did it, and they were absolutely terrible. I could tell that they hadn't prepared at all, but they requested it, right? So I told them explicitly that that was terrible, and that you really need to practice and, write out bullet points for certain answers. Um, and so the person followed up and said that was demoralizing, and that the person couldn't sleep that night. And so they ended the mentorship. And I'm like, all right, well, if there are things that, are not disrupting your sleep at night, like, you need to figure out like whether you're really challenging yourself, because I
Right.
could think of so many times, I've woken up at night for things that have just really irked me. So anyway, the point is, yeah, Gen Z, millennials,
Uh-oh.
I'm
Here we
a
go.
little older, but you can't be a snowflake, right?
Sure.
Like you have to accept criticism, whether it's constructive or just honest. And you really need to challenge yourself to rise above that. And a lot of people have problems with that. So if that's one of your hangups, um, then you really need to get over that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I mean, I just to yeah, to continue on that thread for a second. There are some circumstances under which I would not recommend your mentorship, and it's if you're not ready for um seriously, like, not unfiltered. You're not rude, you're not pushy, you're not excessive, but you will say the truth through the lens of your experience, in terms of yeah, how a mock interview goes, or where your skills actually are, what skill set you have to bring to these jobs that you think you may or may not be qualified for. So yeah, there's plenty of reasons why I would recommend you. And one of them is not, if you're not interested in getting an honest evaluation of where you are from the lens of a tenured professional. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't like to coddle. Um, and I think one of the beauties of my experience in product management is that it's very cross-functional. So I've worked with very talented engineers,
Mm,
very egotistic engineers, very not so good engineers. Same for designers, same for QA, same for marketing people, same for C-level executives. So I have had all that exposure to, really good examples of those roles. So, I've had all those interactions and I can share them with people and recognize, like, if you're a UX designer and you're sharing a portfolio with me and it has layout issues or typos, or not a clear story, then I'm going to tell you that there's no way you're going to get a job as a product designer if you can't proofread your own portfolio.
right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, that was one thing on I'm just gonna throw myself under the bus here. That was one of the things that um kind of made me realize, oh, I can't bullshit this guy, is like I drafted again, back to the resume. So we'll leave aside the fact that resumes aren't very important, and whatever else. But yeah, I drafted a resume, and I think I used a Canva template, and I think I left some boilerplate text in there, and I saw that comment that you left on there, and I was like, oh no, I completely, like, he's actually attentive, so he's not going to yeah.
Yeah.
Eric is not
I,
here to take my money and give me superficial advice. If I'm missing a period in my resume, that's going to be something that he's going to notice and actually give feedback on, which is great. But yeah.
yeah. And that's the beauty of mentoring too, even, virtually or Zoom, is getting on a call, screen sharing, diving into documents, working through issues and resolving them on the fly, which is how most people work in, collaborative software or digital, development environments, right? So I place a high priority on that. And I also feel that another thing that's very overlooked by job candidates is the power of screen sharing during interviews. And so I always recommend have at least 4 or 5 tabs open with, you know, work samples that could likely come up in the context of the interview. Also, an outline that you've done about the company that you're interviewing with that shows all of the basic elements as it relates to your role, like what is the company's value proposition? How long have they been in business? What is their mission statement? And then the more that you can screen share and show real proof points, either from a portfolio, code samples, work samples, the more you can take control over the narrative of the interview. And the more impressive that is, because it shows a bias for action and it shows proof of your accomplishments. And it shows that you've done the research on the company and you have a document to prove that. And it's like night and day compared to a candidate just sitting there, like just answering questions by voice, right? Like,
yeah.
You know,
so much of this, I have some background in sales, and a lot of this just comes back to establishing frame in the conversation. So, I mean, part of it, with that, like part of what you just made me think about is what is the subject of the interview itself? So, I mean, are you showing up so that you can be asked questions and try to pass those questions, or are you coming to the table in this interview to qualify yourself as somebody who understands a company is hiring you because they have a problem. So do you understand the problem? Can you document the problem? And can you roughly document like a solution to that problem, or give examples of when a similar problem was apparent in a project or a previous company that you worked for, and illustrate how you filled that role? Those are two completely different mindsets, but it looks the same when there's still two frames on Zoom in both of those situations. So I think people can think of those things as the same thing, when in reality, if you maybe pick up a book or two on sales, and learn a little bit about frame control and actually steering the narrative of a conversation without being overly domineering, that might be extremely beneficial. At least it was for me. So
yeah, that's a great observation. I think sales is a huge component of the job search. I would say you have to product manage your job search. You have to project manage it, in terms of scheduling and managing your pipeline. On the product management front, you have to make sure all your materials are solid and are very clear, pithy, and very high signal to noise ratio. And then there's the sales part, which comes from practicing, recording videos of yourself, rehearsing, being really crisp in the way that you present yourself as a person. Especially, most of it's online now, but there are cases, I assume, where people are going in for live interviews again. Sure. But anyway, yeah, all that's important. And I think the main thing too is that there's kind of like a spectrum when you're looking for work with a specific company. It's like, on one end, you can demonstrate what you've done in the past, and however well you can do that, and you're, quantifying your accomplishments, showing visual examples like we talked about. And then there's, what you can do for that company specifically, right? So if I share my screen real quick.
Please.
I have examples of that where, for me, my background's in product. So, and most of that's business to consumer. So I look for companies that really resonate with me from a product perspective. So let's take Ridwell, for example. I did this over a year ago. They have this box on your front porch where you put hard to recycle items that the regular waste management company won't take, right? Mm. So batteries, light bulbs, clothes, plastics. And so here's the CEO, or co-founder, Aaliyah. I, looked her up on LinkedIn, figured, let me write to Aaliyah, and did a quick screenshot, put a nice background on it, said why I'm writing. And then I took photos of all the Ridwell bins in my neighborhood. And then I did some research to ask people on Facebook what they thought of Ridwell. And I also went on Nextdoor, another community, local community app. And I actually got some responses. And the feedback is, real, right? So then I made some observations about, I think people find a lot of value in Ridwell's proposition and service. But here are some concepts where I think, you could potentially drive growth. And these ideas came from the feedback that I did during the research. Also just my background in IoT. And again, I'm speaking as a customer who is very sensitive to, the future of our planet. I have children, I want them to have a good life. And then I say, here's how I can drive growth for your company. Very simple bullets. And here are the areas where I can contribute. And then I show some projections about if we increase the total number of customers in this area, here's my projected revenue growth. And then at the tail end, I just show kind of a mood board about all the effort that I put into this by, local research, Instagram, social, looking at other people who've used the service. So as you can see, this is almost kind of like product management in a nutshell, right? Where it's almost like I'm pretending I'm working for the company.
Right.
And so then when I write the email, let's take another example like La Marzocco, where they make this high-end espresso machine in Italy, costs $7,000 for the cheapest one. And they have an app that connects to the espresso maker and allows you to control the water temperature and set schedules and turn it on or off. So I found out that they have these apps, and then I went to the app stores and I saw that the ratings were terrible. And the reviews, plenty of them were 1 star. They're absolutely trashing the customer experience. I even tried the app and found the bugs. And then I, extracted all the themes that people were talking about, made some observations again, put together an action plan, quick, short-term, long-term, why I can help, sample press release, kind of Amazon style, working backwards press release. And again, more projections. And then when I wrote to Scott, I found him through LinkedIn, right? The way to pretty much find anybody is through LinkedIn. You go to the company page. What you can do is go to the people section of LinkedIn, look for people that are, in positions related to what you're going for. So I found Scott, and he's a senior PM. He's been there for 13 years. I go to Hunter, where you can see if somebody's email address is valid. I enter that, done, that looks good. So then I go to email. Hi Scott, I'm Eric in Ballard. Record a quick video to express my interest in helping La Marzocco with its connected device strategy. Here's the proposal. We saw that. Here's a quick video where I introduce myself and say why I'm writing. And if you have a few minutes to chat, let's do it. So he knows, nothing about me, right? I told you the origin story here was that one day I was walking on the beach And when I walk on the beach, I pick up garbage so that, like I said, I'm sensitive to that. So I found a business card of one of the software engineers that worked there, and I was really curious why there was no title on it. So that's where I went to LinkedIn. But anyway, so here I have like a triple threat, right? I've got the video, I've got the proposal, and the quick email directly to Scott. And then a couple days later, hi, Eric, thank you for reaching out. Impressive work. I'm in Italy, back in Seattle next week. Can we meet for coffee? So, you know, that shows a lot of intentionality, right? Like a lot of curiosity. It shows a lot of creativity. It shows that I'm drawing on my product management background, my IoT background, and that I'm recognizing a problem within their company that I feel I'm the best person to solve.
Yeah.
So that to me is kind of the ultimate. You don't have to go that far, but if you recognize that someone else probably is.
Right.
And if you're just hoping that words on a page is going to make this type of impact, I think you're really kidding yourself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you're not going to go that far, at least realize that Eric will. So you have at least at least one person that will be head and shoulders above you. And I mean, I in no way, I don't want to downplay at all the amount of effort that these, putting these slide decks together entailed, and really coming up with these problems and creative solutions. But you were talking earlier about efficiency being a big part of this as you continue to iterate and do it again and again. And I can only guess that this was not the first time you did this particular kind of approach. You probably iterated on that process many times. So for me, getting my first position, it was essentially just, writing and sending Loom videos, and I'll iterate on that process over time. But I think, by the 50th time you do something like this, and it's not going to take 50 times with this approach, mind you, maybe the first time it took 4 or 5 hours to put all of this together. But by the time you've done it tens of times, dozens of times, you could probably, you're pulling your slide deck from a template. You're pulling your email, that email was pretty short and straightforward, but you could have that in a Notion document saved, and you copy, paste, put the link in the right spot, take 2 minutes to record your Loom video. And all of a sudden you have a 45 to hour and a half process, instead of the 15-minute process that it takes to go to a company's website, apply, upload your cover letter, etc. You've 5x'd your time, maybe, which sounds like a lot, but you've 50x'd your impact, at least, in terms of how much impact that one application is going to have. So this is like the sniper approach to job hunting, on the more extreme end of the spectrum, I would say. But I mean, it's certainly worked for me. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, what is it called? Google Workplace, right? Or Workspace. One of those. Either way, you should have everything stored online in Google Drive, and every correspondence that you've ever written. I have a notes document that's basically like a diary. So every time I write to somebody, I write it out there, and then I copy and paste. So even if it's a simple LinkedIn message to somebody, I'll write it out first in another doc and then copy and paste. Whoever invented copy and paste, I think is one of the biggest geniuses of all time.
yeah.
And I would add like copy, paste, and customize. So yeah, you need to, even with the mentoring, right? I'm working with people in, 30 countries around the world, and everybody has a unique situation, but generally they fall into different buckets. And I have already drafted some sort of analysis of a person in that situation, whether they have a job and they have imposter syndrome, or they're looking for a job, or they want to level up their skills. I've already written to somebody with very pithy advice about how to attack that. So you have to apply the same thing.
Yeah. I think that it seems like one of the main points of this whole talk is that, especially when addressing the efficiency part of the equation, is front-loading effort pays off disproportionately over the long term. So especially if you're having a hard time getting into a position now, maybe taking some time back, maybe after the 300th application, if you haven't gotten the job, maybe skip the next 50 applications you send and just take a week to completely overhaul your entire job hunting process and make it extremely unique, like in the way that you've demonstrated for us over the last better part of an hour now, and just
or
make
even,
a bet on go ahead, even better,
or even better, just work on a project and a pitch, because you get the dual benefit of you're challenging yourself to find an angle for yourself, whether they have a job available or not. With La Marzocco, they didn't have a job available, but I found a problem that, is really damaging their brand and their customers' perception of their products.
Right.
So if that's not compelling enough for them to invest in, I can't control that, right? But I at least spot the problem and show what the path to resolving it is. So anyway, I feel like you get the double benefit there. You're working, you're flexing your muscles, like you're, whatever discipline you are good at. And then you're putting yourself out there and presenting yourself, without any expectation of anything in return. And you're offering value without asking for anything. You're just asking to start a conversation.
Yeah.
And so, if you take the amount of time you spend to send out 100 applications and compare it to the time to do one project, your numbers, your percent response rate is probably higher for the one,
right?
Like at least 10 times higher. Or no, maybe like 80 times higher, basically.
Right. Yeah. Cool. All right, Eric. Well, this has been extremely informative. I really appreciate you taking the time. I think a ton of people are going to find this very valuable. If you would like, please take a minute to shout yourself out. Where can people find you? How does somebody get in touch with you if they like what they've heard today?
Cool. Yeah, I'm totally open to that. I'm on LinkedIn, Eric Crawford. You can search that, which has links to all my stuff. Just look for the bald guy and
the flower pictures.
Yeah. And Mentor Cruise. If you search me there or look at the top mentors, you'll find me there. I've worked with people at this point from Albania to Vietnam and everywhere in between. And it's been really enlightening. I feel like I've helped a lot of people just like you. And, if you're willing to put in the work, we can have a great relationship. And I can, I charge a very low price compared to a lot of people because I want to keep it very accessible to people on a global level. And I offer a ton of value in exchange for that, but I also agree to be, a support resource for you for the rest of your career, which, I think we've exemplified that in the way that we've stayed connected and have, collaborated on different things. So you're, perfect case study.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's that's why I wanted to have you on. For anybody who has any doubts, this is not a paid video that I'm doing with you. I just wanted to take this opportunity. I don't have a massive platform at this time, but I hope that I can, potentially move the needle a little bit for you, and at least get you some access to meet a few more cool and interesting people that can be helped out by your services. So, yeah, thanks again for coming on, Eric. I really appreciate the time.
Likewise, my pleasure. Thanks, Colby.